Hi, I'm pro saxophonist Jamie Anderson and you're watching Get Your Sax Together. I sax up your Sunday every week with free online saxophone lessons, bringing you great technique tips, player profiles and breakdowns of your favourite sax solos. If you've ever bought yourself some fancy sax gear hoping to get a better sound, then keep watching, because in this week's free online saxophone lesson, I'm going to try and establish what's more important, the player or the setup. Man, because of all these greatest pop sax solo compilations, it feels like an age since my last talkie video, but honestly, my 2021 has been a blur so far, so I had to take a break from them before I lost my mind and my family. Anyway, it's great to be back in the hot seat, and I've even got a new camera, so God knows what this is going to look like. Fingers crossed it looks okay. Today I'm going to be peeling back the kimono and examining the burning question of gear versus player. And I'm even going to put my reputation on the line and play a beginner's setup for you so you can decide for yourself. But just before we dive into it, if you want to dig a bit deeper into everything from embouchure and breathing to technique, tone and practice routines, then check out my free Saxophone Success Masterclass. There's a whole load of solid teaching that could transform your playing overnight. So jump in now at getyoursaxtogether.com/masterclass or use the link in the description. Okay, that said, let's get on with the show. I've had an overwhelming response to my recent greatest sax solo videos, which is totally awesome by the way, thank you guys. And one of the most common things I've been asked by you is what my setups are on each sax. This is also a popular topic in sax forums and YouTube comments. Now forgive me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure people don't want to know out of curiosity alone. I'm sure it's because they think my setup is the magic key to sounding like I do. Everyone's obsessed with mouthpieces and gear, thinking it will give them the sound they want. But is this true? Well, first of all, let me tell you that I rarely have conversations about gear with my fellow pro saxophonists. I'm not saying it never happens, and obviously some people are more nerdy about sax gear than others, but as a general rule, we just don't talk about gear that much. Why? Because we all understand that it doesn't matter that much. We'll find a setup that suits us in terms of blowing resistance and a general sound world, and then the rest is up to us. Assuming that your instrument is in perfect working order, how familiar you are with your sax is much more important than what sax you play. It's important to be acutely aware of the personality of your own sax, the intonation variations in each note, how your sax heats up and cools down, what happens to tone and tuning when you push the volume at both extremes, how your tone blends with others, what the best fingerings are for the altissimo notes, and how you can alter the tuning with subtle fingering variations. With mouthpieces, although many pros have a wide variety of options, there isn't a wide variety of sound for each player. Personally, I've never been one to tinker with my setup. I've only had 4 tenor mouthpieces my whole life. And even then, I never swapped between them. I just used one for years, then made a change, and it's never stopped me performing in a wide variety of professional situations, from jazz to pop to theatre pit and everything in between. For the record, I've been using a vintage Autolink 8 Florida USA model tenor mouthpiece for the last 15 years or so, but that's just me. Many pros do like to change it up a lot, but they still sound like themselves on every piece, just a bit brighter or darker. For example, I'm sure you've seen some of Nigel or Jay's great mouthpiece reviews on McGill Music Sax School or Better Sax, and you can tell that the difference between each piece is always shades of bright or dark, rather than totally different sounds. You can't reinvent the wheel by changing your mouthpiece. As a general rule of thumb, the further you get from your vocal tract, the less important the component is to your sound. So, assuming the importance of great breathing, the components in order of importance to your sound are your vocal tract and mouth, your embouchure, your mouthpiece and reed, and finally your saxophone. Paradoxically, this is the exact opposite to what most hobbyist saxophonists focus on. The talk is all about the saxes and mouthpieces, a bit about embouchure, and virtually nothing about your vocal tract and larynx. I think there may be multiple reasons for this. For a start, your vocal tract is in the dark. And until recent research using endoscopy and fluoroscopy, we had no way of objectively quantifying what was happening in there. The next reason is that Even when you know exactly what to do with your vocal tract, it's hard to train that part of your anatomy. So it's easier to brush it under the carpet and forget about it. Sorry, but I can't resist a quick plug here, guys. In my Total Tone Mastery course, you'll learn exactly how to control your vocal tract and why it's so important to your sax sound. Plug over. Finally, not having an online course on embouchure and vocal tracts like me, the powerful sax industry and YouTube fraternity can't sell you anything to improve your throat and mouth position, so you don't tend to hear about it much. What they can do, however, is assure you that this mouthpiece or that saxophone will be the answer to all your tone problems. Money talks, but it doesn't always tell you the whole truth, I'm afraid. Okay, so hopefully I've made my point, but let's just give a bit of balance here as well. Even though the most important factor is your vocal tract and embouchure, followed by your mouthpiece and sax, it doesn't mean that those two physical things mean nothing. Far from it. Otherwise, I'd be on a 300 quid alto from Amazon with the mouthpiece that came in the box, instead of my Selmer Mark 6 and Jody Jazz. These things do matter. They do make a difference to the sound, and you'll hear that for yourself just shortly. My point is that they don't matter as much as everyone thinks they do. Why don't I play Dave Gardella on tenor? Because I prefer the sound of my vintage Florida Link. Gear matters, but it's not the most important thing. And I'm sure that the frustration many sax players experience with their sound is caused predominantly by the way they blow as opposed to their setup. Just before I demo two different setups, remember that I'm assuming that your equipment is in perfect working order. If you have a mouthpiece with a badly finished, uneven table or a sax that leaks, then suddenly gear matters a whole lot. The last thing you want to be doing is fighting a defective setup. So before you do anything, make sure your gear is in perfect working order. And let's not forget that reeds can make a tremendous difference too, but I don't have time to go down that rabbit hole here. Okay, enough chat. Let's now compare two very different setups and put my theory to the test. In this test, I'm going to compare my usual alto setup with a standard beginner's setup so you can see how different a pro setup sounds compared to an entry-level one. My entry-level setup is a Yamaha YES 23 student model sax with a Yamaha 4C mouthpiece, the most popular mouthpiece in the world for beginner saxophonists. I'll be contrasting that with my Selmer Mark 6 and Jody Jazz HR8 mouthpiece. The entry-level setup would cost around 450 quid or just over $600, and my usual setup would cost around about £5,500 or $7,500. In terms of the reed, I've chosen a reed that anyone can replicate exactly, and that's a Leger Signature 3. I'm using exactly the same reed for both setups. I'm also using exactly the same ligature for both mouthpieces, which is a very plain Van Doren MO metal band. Nothing fancy. And by the way, the thing that makes the very least difference out of everything is your ligature. As long as it holds the reed nice and securely, the lig's the last thing you need to be worrying about. I'm going to play a couple of contrasting solos from my recent greatest sax solos videos. For a jazzier vibe, you'll hear Phil Wood's solo on Just the Way You Are by Billy Joel, and for something a bit more poppy, you'll hear Ernie Watts' solo on Arthur's Theme by Christopher Cross. I'm not going to use any EQ or reverb, so this is going to be a straight shootout in the driest possible way, warts and all. To make it more fun, I'm going to hide the identity of each setup in case your listening is biased by what you see. I'll reveal which was which at the end, but comment Pro A or Pro B depending on which one you thought was my Selmer Mark 6 Pro setup. Here we go. So which one did you think was my pro setup? A or B? Just put Pro A or Pro B in the comments. And don't change your answer after you find out the truth. Your original impressions only, please. So my Pro Selma Mark 6 setup was B and the beginner setup was A. Now the point of this exercise isn't to try and persuade you that you can make a beginner setup sound the same as a pro setup. That's unrealistic, and I'm guessing that most of you will have put B as the pro setup. But I want you to realise that before you spend hundreds or even thousands of dollars on gear, you can still sound great on a beginner's setup if you blow well. Now, if you already sound awesome on your setup and you feel you've outgrown it, or if you feel there's some kind of defect with something in your setup, then by all means go ahead and have yourself a bit of retail therapy. Fill your boots. Just be realistic about the margin of gain you'll get by doing it. Finally, as we all know, YouTube is full of fantastic and informative videos reviewing the latest and greatest equipment. And let's be honest, we all secretly love watching that stuff. So if you've got the money and you want to just splash out in something for yourself, go ahead and get that new mouthpiece, ligature or sax and enjoy it. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. Just enjoy it for what it is though, a shiny new toy, not the answer to all of your problems. So that wraps it up for this week. Another Sunday saxed up for your pleasure. If you were expecting a sax compilation from the 90s this week, sorry to disappoint you, but don't worry, I will get back to it. Truth is, I'm actually struggling to think of iconic pop sax solos from the 1990s. So if you can think of any, I'd love for you to share them in the comments. So far, I've only got I Wonder Why and Simply Red's Something Got Me Started. That's it. For the 1980s, I had about 50 to whittle it down from. If I can't get enough for the 90s and noughties, I'll combine them into a dance music edition. Anyway, I'm not going to keep saying about subscribing and clicking the bell because we all know that by now. But if you want to support my endeavours here on Get Your Sax Together, you can buy me a coffee using the link in the description, and many, many thanks to all my wonderful and generous supporters for doing just that. I can't always keep up replying to all the comments, but I promise you I get an email notification for everyone and I read all your lovely comments, and I really appreciate your kindness, especially during this ongoing zombie apocalypse for the performing arts. Anyway, until next week's video, practice hard, practice smart, and enjoy your music. I'll see you later. This is a popular topic in sax forums, and this is also a popular topic